Well, welcome everybody to our Old National Bank Mid-North Promise Program workshop. We have with us today Musa Ibrahim from Old National Bank, who is the Financial Empowerment Officer. And today he's going to be presenting us with personal banking. So save room for questions, time for questions at the end, and we'll ask those if you want to put them in the chat or in the room, and we'll cover some of those. And Musa would be happy to answer some of those questions that are way over my head, but fortunately well in his. So without further ado, here is Musa.
Thank you so much. I hope you guys are doing well today. So should I look at this camera or just around the room? Does it matter where?
Around the room.
Okay. Hope you guys are doing well today. Looking forward to Good Friday. So like our MC would say, my name is Musa Ibrahim. I'm with Old National Bank. And today we're talking about a concept in personal banking that I'm very passionate about. I think people just usually fly by this whole thing and everyone thinks that they have it together. And I simply call this account management. For this presentation, managing your accounts. So can we hit the next slide, please? Thank you, Angelina. So when I was in college, that was right around the time that, I had bank accounts. I was actually getting some income in, and I was able to work 2 jobs, go to school, whatnot. Had some sort of currency running in and out of my, bank accounts. And this is what I was like in college. This guy. Now, obviously, I'm not a middle-aged white man, but I was just as stressed as he is right now. I was dealing with issues like late bill payments, constant money stress, overspending, and I couldn't even afford decent days, right? Now, all that stuff's different right now. The only thing that isn't, the only different thing is I can't seem to find a day, even though I can afford a day. So, we're gonna hit the next slide, and I've got a couple of concepts to prevent you from being like me. I did a couple of things in my account management life, or I guess personal banking life. The first thing I did was I set boundaries for my spending habits, my fun spending habits. You see what I did there? Put a nice, quotation mark near them. And I created a recurring checking account for all of my mandatory monthly expenses like gas, groceries, toiletries, all that good stuff. And I created another checking account for all my bills. And I called that one the bill account. I added another layer of security for emergencies. So I pretty much just sat down with myself. I thought to myself, what's the perfect number I need for emergencies? Let's say I want to drive around the road and my tire would blow out. How much would I need to set myself right? So I came up with that number and I opened a new bank account, a savings account, and I called that my E fund, standing for emergency fund. And then I went ahead and I planned my future expenses and I put it into a certain savings account, and I titled this thing a sinking fund. Do we know what a sinking fund is? If someone just puts that in the chat, Angela, you can just cut me off anytime and let me know what you're thinking. But a sinking fund is basically a certain bank account that you open, and every single month or every week you allocate a certain number to it. And the whole idea is within a couple of weeks or a couple of months, you're going to hit the target date. And that target date will pretty much be the day where you can actually afford to pay for that item for cash. So that's what I call the sinking fund here. Can we hit the next slide, please? Okay. So we're gonna get into the grits of it right now. We're gonna start, just talking about each concept by concept. The first thing I did was I opened a checking account and I called that my fund and beer account. Now, literally with this account, I buy food, more food, beer, and more beer. And I just have it on this debit account. That's all. Just food, beer, food, beer, food, beer. And I would like to say, I personally give myself about $150 every single week on this debit card. And I quite simply just allocate it for food and beer. I don't want to seem like an alcoholic. I spend more on food, I promise. And what I do is, certain expenses that I seem to do every single day or multiple times throughout the week, like purchasing coffee, I went ahead and just put it on this card. And I also made, the right decision to make sure that this whole account is not a credit card. Because if it's a credit card, it pretty much defeats the purpose, right? I wouldn't really be putting boundaries around my spending. I'd end up being an alcoholic. I'd spend more and more, on beers. I'd spend more on food. So don't get a credit card for this account. Open a checking account. Think to yourself, what's the average number you need a week? Just for funsies, girls like to get their nails, ladies like to get their nails done. So I don't know how often you guys do that. But
Every 2 weeks.
Okay. Then we'll put that in your mandatory monthly account, right? But for this stuff, this is the coffee, this is the food, this is the beer, this is the guilty pleasure account right here. It's a checking account, and only give yourself a debit account. Don't get a credit card because it defeats the purpose. This way, and I promise if you do this, you'll be able to spend your money confidently. The first time I came up with this whole concept, I remember just like sitting, I was in college, so I didn't really have a lot of money. But I remember just like sitting on the table at a restaurant, 4 of my friends were there, and when the waitress came over, I just confidently take out my wallet with my head up high, and I just put it in her hand, and my college buddies just like frantically looking at the bill, whatnot. I just didn't care at all. You see, this helps you spend your money with confidence. Can we hit the next slide, please? Thank you. Okay, and then so we covered the checking account. That's the fun and beer account for me personally, right? And then I opened up another checking account. So, if you open up my mobile app on my phone, you're going to see a lot of checking accounts and savings accounts. But I went ahead and titled it. So this title over here, gas, groceries, and toiletries, that's exactly what it's called in my bank account. And these are the exact expenses I allocate to this account. So for example, gas, I spend that probably multiple times throughout the week. I think with my driving, I spend about, I don't want to make you guys cringe, but I spend about $90 a week on gas. That's he looked back at me. He's like, "What's going on?" I spend about $90 a week on gas. Is that a question? Yep.
Is that now with the current gas prices?
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Now with the current gas prices, and I've got groceries. I spend quite a bit on groceries because I love to cook, and toiletries. Toiletries are pretty much any sort of expense. When I talk to my clients and I try to define what toiletries are to them, I just say, walk into your bathroom and whatever's on the counter, those are your toiletries. You probably use them all the time, like a toothbrush. Ladies have a lot more of that stuff on their counters than the guys do, right? Guys' counters are just dirty and whatnot, like nuts. But for the most part, you use this stuff all the time. And you need a debit card to purchase this stuff at the store, right? You don't just walk up to the cashier and read off your, account number, routing number. So what I would suggest is open up another checking account and get a debit card for it, and then go ahead. This will literally prompt you to budget. Go ahead and think to yourself, how many of these purchases do I have, and how much does it truly cost me on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to promise myself that I'm going to allocate a certain amount of money every single week or every single 2 weeks whenever I get paid, and put it into this checking account. So whenever you go to the grocery store or the gas station, you take out your wallet, and then you take out the other debit card, not the fun and beer account, the other debit card, and you hand it to them. You see, this way, I told you guys that I spend $90 on gas every single week. Well, when I go to the gas station and I take out my card, if I have an idea that that's the first time I'm spending money on gas that week, I know not to spend anything over $45. I'm staying within my boundaries, right? So that's what this account will do to you. Now, I would suggest that you make your gas, groceries, toiletries, debit card look a lot different from your fun and beer account. So what I'm going to do over here, I hope I don't drop the mic. Over here, I have my debit card for the gas and groceries, and then I have my other debit card for the food and fun. So whenever I go to eat some, I don't know, anything, I just take out my food and fun card, and whenever I go to the gas station, I just hand them this stuff. And it'll really just separate my expenses. Can we hit the next slide, please?
Yep.
Thank you. I see you guys are putting a children's museum ad every single slide, right? That's a great promotion. Okay. So the next thing I did was I went ahead and I said, okay, I've got my food and beer account, and I've got my gas and groceries account. And I was like, okay, what what else does a 23-year-old man spend money on? I mean, when you really think about it, well, if you look at it on a, from a very surface perspective, you're like, well, that's kind of all you need, right? Gas, groceries, food and beer, that's about it. You don't need anything else, right? I was like, well, I'm an adult. I actually have like more expenses. I probably have expenses that I need to look at, before I, even think about buying beer, gas, or groceries. And yes, I do. I've got stuff like rent, uh, car payments, car insurance, all that stuff. These are expenses that, geez, if I don't make them, I'm probably not gonna have a car. If I don't make them, probably have to end up paying a huge fine for not having car insurance. If I don't pay my rent, I don't know, I'll probably get kicked out. So what I did was I opened up another checking account and I said, okay, all these super, super big mandatory monthly expenses, I'm going to allocate them all to this checking account. And what I'm going to do is I will not get a credit card or a debit card for this. And the reason why that's so is, let's say I were to spend all my food and beer account. Well, let's just imagine Musa was crazy. He's just going out of this world. He's just totally neglecting everything he ever told you guys. I spent all my money on food and beer. My debit card just maxed out. And that's, you know what? I want more food. I want more beer. And I take out my gas and groceries and toiletries, debit card, and I spend all my money on food and beer, and I don't have money for gas. I was like, you know what? I want more beer. I want more beer. If I had a credit card or debit card for this bill account, I'll go right into it. I'll spend my rent money on food and beer, and I promise I'm not an alcoholic. I'll just keep, prefacing that, right? I keep mentioning beer here. So what I did with this account was I opened up a checking account and I said, okay, I'm going to allocate all the money that I need for rent, car insurance, all that boring stuff. And I'm going to go ahead and sort of write down the account and routing number and give it to all these financial institutions, also known as accreditors, right? The bank, really for the most part, they're your creditor. You got to pay them money. Your landlord, they're your creditor. These are people that you really have to pay. And if you don't pay them, you probably have some sort of legal, repercussion coming at you. So what I did was I gave them the account number and the routing number, and they do something called an ACH withdrawal. So really, no matter what, they're going to get their money. So if the rent man or the landlord just went ahead and tore out the rent money, and I didn't have $1,000, chances are my account will go negative $1,000, and I'll have to take that issue with the bank. You see, so everything will be taken care of. That does not happen. Okay. The last concept there, I can touch on that a little bit, right? So if you shop, this will actually apply to the gas and groceries, but I'll touch on that just a little bit. Let's say, you allocate your expenses so much that you know exactly how much you spend on a certain item. Like I said, gas, I know I spend $90 on toiletries. For some items, I spend $15, my deodorant about $8. If I were to go to the grocery store or the supermarket and I were to see a new brand of deodorant, I was like, oh, this was $12. Well, what that's going to do is I'm going to have to have this mental battle with myself. I'm like, well, I normally don't spend $12 on deodorant. I spend $8. My buddies would be like, how do you know that? I was like, well, this is because I budget, I allocate my resources. I have a checking account for every single category of expenses that I have. But that was just a little part that I wanted to add in there just to motivate you guys. Can we hit the next slide, please? Slide 7. Okay. And then I went ahead and opened up an emergency account. And now I'm just going to assume that everyone here has an emergency fund. I'll just assume so. Most people do, even though there's a research that's been floating around for a couple of years that says that 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 Americans cannot afford $1,000 emergency. And that's actually pretty frightening if you think about it. That really contributes to the debt cycle that many people are in, their relationship that they have with the payday lenders, knowing these clients on a first name basis. What I like to tell my clients is, what you can really do to set yourself up for success and avoid the debt cycle that's just prevalent in the US is go ahead and come up with an emergency fund. Here's the easiest rule or the first rule. If you make under $20,000, go ahead and save $500 and put it into a Savings account. I would say don't put it in a regular savings account, or don't put it in a savings account with a bank that you have a checking account with. Because you know what'll happen? You'll transfer. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I've done it many times when I went in more food, more beer, right? I would suggest that you open a bank account with a different bank. I'm not going to mention any other bank here apart from Old National Bank. So if you don't have a bank for Old National Bank, come on over, open up a savings account. And we're not going to open up a checking account for you. So you can just have all that money in there. You can't transfer it. And that way, when you truly have an emergency, you can access it. So we said $500 for people making under $20,000. Well, if you make over $20,000, go ahead and save $1,000, right? Okay. And then you're going to think to yourself, okay, I have $1,000. Is that all I need for an emergency fund? I was like, well, first off, I'm going to clap for you. Congratulations. You've done the first step. Let's look at the other things. Figure out what your bare bone budget is. I'm sure, the name kind of gives it away. We all know, we can all sense what a bare bone budget is, right? Let's say Musa were to lose his job. He loses everything, and he has to make it work for the next 3 months. I've got a couple of things that I'm going to cut out of my financial diet. First off, I won't get my shoes shine anymore, right? If you don't got a job, if you don't got nowhere to go, it's just like being all dressed up with nowhere to go. So I'll stop getting my shoes. Oh, what's that?
No beer.
No beer. Yeah, that's right. No more beer. No more beer. No more cheap food. No more shoe shines. No more nice car washes. I'll have to wash it myself. So I've got a separate set of things that I'm automatically going to tear out of my life. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out what that magic number is that I use, that I spend every single month, that'll keep me alive and running well. Because, instead of looking for food or beer or shoe shining myself or shine my shoes, I'll need to be up every single morning looking for a job, right? So, because I won't have time for food or beer if I don't have a job. Okay. So I come up with that number, and this number is just really a really strict budget, right? Let's say I spend $2,000. If I really sit down and be honest with myself, I could probably cut all those expenses down to $1,300 a month. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, if I were to lose my job, what am I going to do? How long would it take me, given market conditions, how long would it take me to find another job? I would say at least 3 months. Obviously, for most people, it's going to take a lot less than 3 months, right? I'm going to say, okay, 3 months, I'm going to save 3 months worth of living expenses. So $1,300 times 3. And I'll go ahead and put that money on top of the E-fund. This way, when I look at my emergency fund, I know I'm secure. I know that if my car blows out, I'd be able to fix it. If I lose my job, I'd be able to live bare bones, for another 3 months. And I'm going to say, oh man, I've gone 3 months with no food or shoe shines or beer. I'm going to need to get a job. It'll motivate me. You see? So find your bare bone budget number and go ahead and times that by 3, 4, 5, 6. However much you think it'll take you for to find a job. The last concept, well, it's not really much of a concept. It's kind of a truth that there's this very, very well-known guy on the internet. Everybody knows him, Dave Ramsey, right? I say his name sometimes. Some people cringe. Some people, flee him out. They're all happy, but I love this guy. He's done so much in my life. He says, once you have an emergency fund, emergencies seem to just not happen, right? So I just wanted to throw that at you guys. Think about it a little bit. And can we switch to the next slide? This might be the last slide. Okay.
It's close to the last one.
Close to the last slide? Okay. This is the sinking fund. We all like stuff, right? We all love stuff. I was at the Apple store a couple weeks back, and I don't even shop really. I don't like the mall. I don't enjoy it. I think there's too many people. All the stuff seems unnecessary, but I was walking around the Apple store, well, the mall in general, and I, came across the Apple store, and it's just always interesting, They've got these really cool looking hippie people with their nice Apple shirts on, and people just floating around the counters looking at the stuff. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give this place a try. I'm going to walk into the Apple store and I'll see what they have to offer me. And I walked over and I saw some, people standing at a counter, and they had these iPads sort of, laid out. And I said, a lot of people at work, they have iPads. and they seem to be really organized, blah, blah, blah. They look cool when they're working on it. What if I got myself an iPad? And I, went ahead, I looked at the price, and, one was $500 and the other was $700. Now, theoretically, that's not a lot of money, right? It's a lot of money, but not really. And I said, okay, I think I would like to buy an iPad. What kind of expense is that? Is that an emergency? That's just a pure desire, right? Because I've made it this far in my life without an iPad, right? So I definitely don't need it. And I can probably make it a couple more years without an iPad, right? Unless something crazy happens. So for purchases or desires like that, I went ahead and opened up another account. That's a savings account, and I titled it the sinking fund account. It's sinking, so every money that you're putting in, there's just going to be spent on something, at some point. And I said, okay, if I want an iPad, I'm going to have to discipline myself and say, okay, how much does this iPad cost? $500. Okay, when would I like it by? I don't know, 12 months, if I can bear that. And I'll go ahead and ask myself, okay, $500, how much money do I have to allocate every single month towards this fund in order to reach my goal to have an iPad in my hand in 12 months? So what I did was every single purchase that I have, I just go ahead and put it in this fund. Or I just kind of, I do it one at a time, right? So let's say iPad. I'll go ahead and open up that bank account, title that iPad fund, 12 months, 11 months ago, 10 months ago, 9 months ago, and it'll help me reach that goal. It'll help me prioritize my expenses. You see, if I want an iPad and I'm driving, past a car line, and I see another car, and I'm like, oh, I want a car. I'll ask myself, okay, Mr., do you want a car or an iPad? You see, help me prioritize my expenses, sort of work on one goal at a time, and, quite literally, honestly, prevent me from getting into a lot of debt, because there's so much credit available today. I could just easily walk over to a payday lender and they'll give me money for an iPad, right? Do not go to a payday lender. I don't like those guys. I really don't. So that was my last account that I did. I called it a sinking fund. And, I've probably done this for about 2-3 years. And if you remember the first slide of that middle-aged white man, stressed out with his head, with his hand in his head and all sad and, not being able to go out on dates and all that stuff, just, really boring life. That was me, super stressed out. I didn't know where my money was going. I didn't know how it was coming in. But when I structured my accounts like this, I'm just able to spend my money confidently, joyfully. I know how much I can afford. When people ask me to support them for some, mission, I can pay them money. I can give to charities knowing that I have the funds for that, or knowing that I can in the next 2-3 months, right? I'm a lot more confident with my money. So this concept is called account management, right? It's super simple, but to be honest with you, most people don't do this. If you were to walk down the street and you say, hey, how much money do you have in your bank account? Or do you have money for this? They're gonna say, oh, I'll check my checking account. And then you say, okay, how much do you have in savings? I'll check my savings account. In all reality, most people just have a checking account and a savings account, and they never really structure their funds. Some people open up a checking account, you see $2,000, and then they open up their savings, I don't know, another $2,000, and they don't know what it's for. They don't structure their payments or accounts. And so that's something that I really just wanted to share with you guys. That's on my heart. When you guys invited me here for the Children's Museum, I talked. But if you guys have any question, please go ahead and put me on the hot seat. I'll try to leave as soon as I can. I don't want to face any hard questions. But I'm just kidding. I'll let you guys know if I can't answer a question. But yeah, questions welcome. Oh, is it, so would it pop up on the screen, the questions, or?
No, I have to go look.
Okay, no worries. Take your
And
time.
actually, no questions online.
Okay, that's good.
No, but we'll send out your email address because it's a little bit hard to see.
So my email address is, that's a bad font color I put on there. Moussa, MOUSSA .Ibrahim, IBRAHIM @oldnational.com. And I've got my cell number 317-510-0497. There we go. Feels like a car commercial or something. Getting that stuff out. But yeah, open to questions. Any sort of question. And that's pretty much what we have on the agenda today, just talking about, this account management. I'd love some, perspective on how you structure your accounts. Maybe after this, we could take a group photo so I can, show it to Andre, my boss, and show it to my mom as well, show that I'm making something myself. But any comments or questions?
This is very helpful and informative because I can tell you that I do not structure my accounts like you outlined here. And I think that's a good strategy. So this is something that I'm going to start practicing. So thank you for sharing that with us.
You're very welcome. Yeah. Thank you for finding it helpful.
Moose, I have a question. So does Old National Bank provide some services, or even just right now, with regard to differentiating the difference between the sinking fund account and the fund account? Because in my head, I'm like, I could see how, well, I think that could actually be the fun part. So like helping someone, I guess, process through what it is for themselves that is. Because an iPad, some people could, be like, well, that'll be my food and beer and I just won't eat this week and stuff like that. So I guess how is the prioritization structured conversationally between you and the client and whomever? Because I could just see those lines being blurred for certain people. Does that make sense? Sorry,
it does.
Talking all around.
So we have a really, really good mobile app. First off, you can open a lot of different checking accounts and savings account like most banks. We have a money management section in our app too that'll show you how much you're spending on certain categories. But to answer your question specifically, you can actually click on any of the checking account columns or savings account columns, and there's a 3-dot thing that you hit. It'll give you the option to quite literally title the name of that checking account. So if you open up your mobile app with whatever bank you have, you'll usually just see like a number that says 04 something like the account number, the remaining of it. You could turn that into, you can change that name. So you could quite literally call it the iPad fund. So that, I hope that answered your question. That'll help you differentiate the accounts for what they're for.
Yeah, that's helpful for sure. I appreciate that. Yeah, because I just was thinking, I'm like, well, I would just move it on over for the fund that month.
Yeah.
Then you could just, so easily just tap into the checking, even though it's not what it's there for.
Yeah, and if you remember too, when I took out my wallet, so for the 2 accounts, I have the fund and beer account, and I have the other account, which is for gas, groceries, and just mandatory toiletry stuff. I went ahead and put little stickers on my debit card. So whenever I'm spending my money on food and beer, I have this little yellow neon sticker on my debit card that says food and beer. Sometimes people think it's funny, but it really helps me differentiate, my expenses, or know that I'm, spending my money with the right card. And the debit card, the gas and groceries card, I put another sticker on there for like gas, just something to differentiate them. So that's a really good question.
Yeah, I second what Angelina said. I really, really like this, and I'm over here trying to figure out like how I can make this work in my marriage, because I don't, my husband, I don't know if he'll like the idea of doing a bunch of different cards, but I know that we kind of already do that with the savings. Like when you said something about savings account, like put it in another bank, like I did that years ago because I realized like if it was tied right to my checking account, I was just
Transfer it over.
I want this, I'll transfer it over, so now it's like out of mind, out of sight. I don't even really, and I have like auto drafts going from my checking account to my savings account. Well, both of us do to our different savings accounts. So we don't even, it comes off the top right away and we don't even see it. So I had a question. So I guess, does Old National have an option to like, so I'm thinking about like, if you have all these different checking accounts, you probably have one account that your paycheck goes into, or do you just have it spread out over the checking accounts? So how does that work?
That's a good question. So I'll answer both those questions. So personally, when I get my checking account, when I get my paycheck, I get paid every other Friday. I have a certain number that hits. I almost gave off my pay. I have a certain number that hits that checking account, and then I have, through our payment system, you could actually tell the payment company to sort of set a certain percentage, send a certain percentage into a different checking account. You see, so I have about $220 hit a different checking account, for a certain expense every other week. So that's something you can do. And the other thing that, that I really liked was you were talking about, how to introduce us to your husband. First off, congratulations, because most couples, there's a lot of couples that don't do this, right? They don't talk about finances together. And I think what you could do is something called a current financial snapshot. Do you know what that is? Have you ever heard of that? It's a fancy word for taking your financial vitals. You sit down with them, and there's this form. I used to walk it through my clients who are married, or really every client. And then you answer, it's like a questionnaire. It'll say something like charity. How much do you give to charity? And then you'll say, I give 20 bucks. And your husband's going to say, oh, but I've been giving 40 bucks. I forgot to tell you. I've been doing that for the past 8 months. You see, you guys are really, it'll be a conversation starter for finances. So I would say start with the current financial snapshot. That you guys would be on the same page, and then you'll see a need. You'll recognize a lot of needs, because when it comes to finances, everybody has a need somewhere. And you'll say, hey, look, how about we sort of share the same savings account, or merge our checking accounts and just have different debit cards, just for accountability purposes. I like to think that it'll make people closer to you.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and we actually, now that you described it, like we already kind of do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, between the two of us, I kind of do like most of the managing.
Yeah.
But like if I see something, I'll say, hey, did you notice we spent this on this last week? Like, and we're both like, no, I didn't realize it. Or he'll say something to me like, did you know we spent this much on food? And I'm like, oh yeah. Like, so we kind of already have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm glad you brought that up, because that's where I can kind of start that conversation of maybe we can do this, and then like I feel like it'll give both of us the freedom to, hey, if I want to just get a sandwich at work, or he has like a cafeteria at his job that has really good food. I have one, but doesn't have good food. So, I won't tell you where I work. No, I'm kidding. But he sometimes wants to buy food there, and to me, it's like way too expensive. So, for him, he can have the freedom to use his fund and food card to buy those sandwiches or whatever he wants to buy there without it cutting into any other thing that we do. So I think I'm gonna try it too.
That's amazing. Let me add one thing for you. You could also talk with your husband and say, okay, we share the same checking account and we can see what we're spending our money on, but here's one thing I can do. Here's one thing we can agree on. We're gonna set a certain number that's okay. Let's say it's okay to spend anything under 50 bucks. But if if either party wants to spend, over that limit, 50 bucks, you would have to schedule a meeting during dinner time and come up with an argument to justify your expense.
Okay.
So, your husband won't, feel distracted or feel like he has to chat with you about the $40 Taco Bell expense. You can say, oh, that's under the $50 limit, So, if you want to buy something that's sort of 50 bucks, say, okay, I'm going to wait on it, and then I'm going to bring it up to the council, you and him, and then I'm going to come up with an argument, and we'll talk about it. Anything under 50 bucks, you guys don't really need to talk about it. That's all. So that's a good strategy. Yeah. Any other questions?
No?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you so much, Melissa.
Thank you, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
Really appreciate that, giving us a lot to think through. I was so excited to introduce you. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Nate Reeves, Family Learning Navigator at the Mid-North Promise Program. There's a survey at your table if you just want to fill that out, just to give us feedback how to do. And I think roaringly, incredibly well, Musa. Again, thank you so much. If you want to reach out to Musa's information is on the slideshow that'll be a part of the YouTube page that we have, and we'll send that out. Please reach out to him with any questions. If you want to join the Mid-North Promise Program, please reach out to us as well. You can reach out to me at edreeves@childrensmuseum.org or anyone from the Community Initiative team. We thank you so much for coming tonight, and we will see you soon. Thank you.